Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, May 20th. The LA Galaxy, a 0-0 draw in Charlotte to end their three-game road trip. If you thought that game was boring, get ready. More three-game weeks coming up, and that third game is probably going to look a lot like what you just saw. We're going to talk about the Galaxy, winless in their last five. Haven't won this month, all draws this month. There's a lot of stuff to talk about here as we get through the LA Galaxy, and also a target. The LA Galaxy apparently have identified somebody they'd like on their team, but does that mean they got to move somebody in order to get them? We're going to talk about that and a whole bunch more. To help me do all that, we're glad to have him back. He is the Panda himself, Mr. Kevin, the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing?
Well, talking about somebody coming back, what about you? How are the pipes?
They seem okay. I mean, you know, we've been slowly working my way back in. Made it through Thursday just barely with a cough and everything, but seem pretty stable today. We'll see how much yelling I have to do.
Yeah, I think you got to apologize to all the nice people out there because they were asking me what happened last Monday. I told them you went out to the train and came back a little hoarse, which is true.
That is true, 100%. Yep, nice and early. People thought I lost my voice screaming from Miguel Berry's late goal there, and that was not the case. So I was actually very.
No,
but at that point, I already lost my voice. But
yeah, no, your reaction to the goal I remember was, "Wow, that was a great goal."
Yeah. Actually, I looked at Damian Calhoun and I just sort of shrugged my shoulders. I was like, "Really? That's it? That's what we're gonna get?"
You know what's funny is people probably don't know this because I don't know how many people watch the press conferences or even if they're still shown on Apple TV. But you generally ask a lot of questions, a lot of really good questions, not as good as Sophie's questions, but a lot of good questions. Anyway, after the Miguel Berry, which was like, I could tell that was like your greatest game in the last several years. You had so much you wanted to talk about, but you couldn't talk. So you were typing out your questions on the phone and holding them up in front of me so that I could then read the question to people.
I got you the good answer too, by the way. Let's be very clear. I asked the Paintsel one. That was the Joseph Paintsel. I'm like, hey, make sure. I'm like, hold it up. I'm like, make sure you ask this. And you're like, okay. And then the funniest part was you were kind of like busy, and so you just like read it word for word, and all I had time to type out was the Joseph Paintsel situation. I figured you'd fill it in.
What about the Paintsel situation?
Yep, that was it.
Well, you know, that reminds me, we have a writer in our sports staff. I think everybody knows him, Sam Farmer. He's a Hall of Famer, and he is in the NFL Hall of Fame. Anyway, early in his career, he was a reporter in Washington, and he was one of those guys who worked for what he would do is if you had a local TV station in Billings, Montana, you would call his company and say, go ask the senator from Montana this question, and then you would pay him for that. Anyway, he was in the White House one day, and the Secretary of Transportation came by and someone said, we got to ask him a question. And he didn't have a question. So he just ran over to the guy and said, what about trains? That was the question. That's kind of how I felt with the Paintsel thing, just the Paintsel situation.
Yeah. What about Paintsel?
What I was asking him.
What about trains? I don't know. Something like that. No, that's funny. Very good. Well, LA Galaxy 0-0 draw over the weekend on, I would say Saturday afternoon-ish. As it was here on the West Coast and on the East Coast, a 7:30 p.m. start time. Always good to see AJ De La Garza at that particular game, so he was there in his Galaxy gear. I felt bad for all the traveling Galaxy fans that had to go do that, but This is a little travel note from Uncle Josh. If you're headed out to watch a Galaxy game on the road, try not to watch the third game of 3 in a week. It will not be very exciting, especially whenever you have two teams like that. That being said, I thought Sophie was spot on whenever she asked Greg this question, and after the press or during the press conference after the game, she said, this game felt like a game that you controlled better than any game this year. And as soon as she said it, I said 100%. The Galaxy were in control of that game, and it never felt like it was going to slip out. It always felt like they were going to be able to hold Charlotte scoreless. It always felt like they were going to be in control of that and have chances to win. And if you go back and watch the highlights and sort of take off your rose-colored glasses or your negative glasses, sort of just look at it as a neutral, go back and look at how many chances the LA Galaxy missed in that game. But they were always defending from a position of strength. They very rarely got countered to the point where they were scrambling, Kevin. And for me, if that's a stepping stone, if that's something they learned in this game, it might be the most important lesson they learn all year. Greg Vanny was high on it. He wasn't saying, hey, we needed to take our chances on the offensive side, but the way that we were always in a position to recover, a position to take space, a position to transition, we put ourselves in good spots to do the things that we did, and we were rarely caught out of position or gave the ball away cheaply. There were a couple, but not many, and this team has sort of thrived on the ability to cough up the ball in bad situations.
And some big lineup changes, too.
Yeah, there was, some rotation and some stuff that you would expect, too. So let me get to the show or the super chat from Patrick, $10 super chat from Patrick. We appreciate that, Patrick. This show rules. I hope so. We'll see how it goes. We're still pretty early on in order for us to have all your confidence like that.
We've got a lot of time to screw this up.
Yeah, 100%. So the 0-0 draw there for Charlotte. Starting lineup, a little rotation. Diego Fagundes in for the injured Joseph Paintsel. Paintsel ruled out for a quote-unquote few weeks by Greg Vanny.
It's a hamstring, right?
It is. It is a hamstring, a tweak of some sort.
I hate to hear that hamstring for a guy who relies on his wheels as much as Paintsel does, because those hamstring things, they just never seem to get better. It always seems like whether it's the player not feeling he can really, push off on that, or whether it just lingers. It just seems like hamstrings you got to get into the off season and a long off season to make it get better.
Yeah, and I'll say I think the most important player for the LA Galaxy, when he's good, the LA Galaxy are really good, is Joseph Paintsel. Able to create some of his own space, able to create space for others, able to pass into good dangerous spots, able to run into dangerous spots. He's been struggling a little bit, and I think Greg Vanny sort of alluded to the fact that they were trying to get him through May so that they could give him some rests in May with a lot of games. And so they were sort of doing, and he goes, now he's going to get that rest. I don't think it was, he said it's not a significant injury in terms of the strain itself. It's not as significant as in a big one, but it's significant enough to where they need to shut him down for a little while. So the LA Galaxy have to figure out how to play without Joseph Paintsel, somebody who had played every game up until that point. So that's
we've both talked about the show about how Diego Fagundes, probably a starter on most teams, probably could be a starter on this team, although Peck and Paintsel obviously in front of him. So yes, there's a drop off, but I guess my point was going to be Fagundes I feel really comfortable with him in the starting lineup. I think he's played well this season when called on. It hurts the bench because you take now your best bench guy and you have to start him. Paintsel, I understand, was on a stationary bike at some point during last week. So he's not, an invalid at this point, but It's probably precautionary as much as anything.
Yeah, yes and no. I think that there's probably an injury there, but they want to take their time and get him back. Some of the other changes: Surreal comes into the starting lineup for Brugman. You had Jalen Neal, who was in for Caceres, and they've been bouncing back and forth between those. And then Novak Mitrovic in goal for the first time this season for John McCarthy. So other than that, I think fairly standard in what you would expect. You had Dejan Jovalic, who was back in playing on this game on turf. You had Gabriel Peck, who was able to line up on the right side without Joseph Paintsel being over there. Diego Fagundes sort of floating between left and right whenever he was playing. So, I thought the Galaxy had a pretty good lineup, a pretty good idea of how they wanted to play. And quite honestly, I think they went out and executed their game plan. It was strange watching it on TV and listening to the announcers, because I felt like the Galaxy were getting the majority of the chances, even though the first half was probably a little slower than maybe they would have liked. I still think this team is probably a better second half team. They always seem to make good adjustments. But for me, I didn't see, I saw the chances created. I mean, listen, you can go through the lineup. Gabriel Peck probably had 2 or 3 that he should have made. Dejan Jovalic had a couple that he should have made. Diego Fagundes scraped one early on in that first half that had it. Maya Yoshida had a chance to score. He had to rush the shot and he missed it wide, and then he had a chance for the header right after it that ended the game that was saved by the Charlotte keeper. The Galaxy got, I think, 6 shots on goal to Charlotte's 2 shots on goal. So we can sort of assess how we want to assess it. Again, this is the offense really letting the defense down. The Galaxy have been able to put together some 0-0 games where the offense hasn't really showed up. That being said, in the third game of 3, I thought it was a pragmatic approach to how you would want to go into Charlotte and try to play a team. Ended Charlotte's win streak, right? Before that, they ended Minnesota's win streak. They ended RSL's win streak. So the Galaxy have been playing some tough games against teams that are hot. And yeah, they haven't come out with the wins. And really, the maturing of the offense needs to happen now. I think that the offense scored a lot of goals early, Kevin. Now you sort of need to see them step up without Paintsel there. You need to see Gabriel Peck, who I think everybody's waiting to sort of really find his form. You need to see him step forward and start scoring some goals. You need guys like Fagundes to score, Mark Delgado to score, Gaston Brugman to score. Brugman had a good shot off a set piece there towards the end too. So all of these things I think were an okay. It made for a boring looking game. I would say that if you're a Galaxy fan and you want defense, that you should be excited about how the Galaxy played that game if you want to see the defense get better, because I thought the defense was very sound.
Well, they almost stole a win. The last 2 touches, there was the shot that was tipped over the bar. Then they got a corner off that, and that they almost scored off that too. Galaxy almost stole a win on deep in stoppage time. The last 2 touches, which is how they got the draw with RSL, the hottest team in the league when they came in. They got that on Barry's touch or score in the last touch of the game. You and I were talking a little bit before about whether the glass is sort of half full or half empty, and you were saying this. Look, they went on the road. They had 3 games on the road. They didn't lose any of them, right? They had 2 games
on the road.
2 games
on the road. Once, yeah.
They didn't lose any of them.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it and say, look, they haven't won since April 21st. Yes, they're unbeaten in their last 5. They lost to Austin, unbeaten in their last 4. But in 3 of their last 5 games, they haven't scored. And it's great to get the point. You're unbeaten in 4 in a row, but you're also winless in 4 in a row. And if you draw every game, it's 34 points. You're not going to make the playoffs.
Right.
So and I think what you were talking about is now is the real test. I mean, they went on the road and they played some really good teams. Charlotte is a pretty good team this year. Minnesota is at the top of the Western Conference standings. And as you said, they just pulled out that draw against RSL, coming back from a 2-goal deficit, 3rd time this season they've done that. But now they come home. Now they have some home games, and maybe this is the real test. Getting a point on the road in Charlotte looks good, but it is a draw. Now they have to come home and win.
Yeah, you would really want that. I mean, the bottom line is, I think that, again, and I said it on Thursday, I'll say it again, the Galaxy dropped points at home to RSL. Yes, they went behind. Yes, they came back. Yes, that was a good quote-unquote draw, right? But it was a good draw because you went behind. Well, you can't go behind at home. This is not, you don't have a choice. You're the LA Galaxy. You've had to play 9 road games so far in the first 14 games, all right? Almost nobody else has had to do that. I went over the chances of, or the probabilities of teams having 8 away games on Thursday, and now the Galaxy are into 9 away games. Not a lot of teams have had that. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the Galaxy should have a string of home games coming up. They play 4 of their next 5 at home. The opponents are, I think, more manageable for them, just in terms of what it is. But the bottom line is dropping points at home now really matters. Because you're watching how draws sort of stagnate you in the standings. I mean, the Galaxy are in 4th. They should be in 5th for points per game because LAFC should jump up above them on points per game. But 4th, 5th, okay, that's fine. You're sort of in the hunt for those home playoff games there, Kevin. So you're close. But if you don't start winning, the slope of the line is not going to increase. It's sort of, I always look at these whenever you look, but draws are very flat, right? And then obviously losses are flat across, right? But you get sort of these angles. And the bottom line was when you're winning, that graph is very steep. It's in has a much steeper slope. Right now, the Galaxy aren't. And so you can sort of see this trend that is developing of them just getting draws. It hasn't been good enough at home for me. That is the big takeaway that I have, and I think that the Galaxy now have to rectify that. They have to get comfortable playing at Dignity Health Sports Park. They have to take out some of these lower opponents like Houston coming in, like Dallas coming in. You have to do these things in order to be the team that they want to be. And I think they're capable of it, but they have to go out, score first, and actually hold on to 3 points at home. And that's something we haven't seen a lot of.
Well, it's funny. This team can be whatever you want it to be. You can say, "Oh, it's a great defensive team." It's had shutouts in 2 of its last 4 games. It hasn't scored in 3 of its last 5. So it's not a good offensive team. You can say, "Oh, they're not losing games, but they're not winning games." And so what is it? They're a good road team. They're getting these points on the road,
right?
But they haven't had chances to play at home yet, so we don't know what they're like at home. They've come back from, as we've mentioned, they've come back from 2-goal deficits. But falling behind by 2 goals in the first half at home is not a good look.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, the Galaxy are out. By the way, Galaxy on the road, 13 points now. They played 9 away games, 13 points from those 9 away games, and they had 12 all of last year. So 12 points on the road all of last year. They played a little more than half of their away games this year, which is crazy to think as well, right? You have 17 away games, right? You have 17 home games, 17 away games. 17. The Galaxy only have 8 more road games this entire year. That seems nuts to me. That seems crazy that only 8 more times will they go on the road, and we're only a third of the way through the season. So that should bode well for the Galaxy. And by the way, their average right now in away points, because normally they average 1.18 on the road, they're at 1.44. So they're an overachieving LA Galaxy team on the road right now, even in spite of the draws. The underperformance has really come. By the way, undefeated at home, Kevin. Let's not sugar. They're undefeated at home, but it's only been 5 games, right? Undefeated at home. But they I think they only have 2 wins. I think there's only 2 wins.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 was the scoreless draw with Seattle, and then the game with RSL, which, again, talking about trying to describe this team or define this team, that RSL team, hottest team in the league, Galaxy got a point. They got a draw. They got it on a score from from Miguel Berry on the last touch of the game.
Right.
Is that good or bad? I mean, you can look at it either way. They fought back. They got the draw. It was an incredible goal.
It's good.
But it's Miguel Berry on the last touch of the game.
But it's good.
Is that how you want to play?
No, I mean, no, that's not how you want to play. Are you put into situations that you create for yourself and you dig your way back out? Yeah, you do.
So that's what I mean. Is it a good team because they came back, or is it a bad team because they were in that situation?
Well, you saying, oh, well, they haven't scored. They're still one of the best offenses in Major League Soccer. We can't take that away from them. Now, you can certainly look at the 0-0s, but again, look at 0-0 on the road in Charlotte. I'm not going to complain about 0-0. They scored 2 goals against Minnesota against one of the best defenses in the league. Okay, so, where are you putting? Look at RSL has a very good defense this year, although if you watch the Rocky Mountain Cup, Jesus, that was a crazy game. 5-3 was the final there. 8 goals in that. That's nuts. Anyway, but if you look at RSL, they scored 2 goals against RSL. This is a team that can score goals. Certainly without Paintsel, I question. You had without Jovalic, I question. If Jovalic is back in, if he's ready to go, then I think you're going to be okay. I think there's going to be goals for the LA Galaxy to come. I'm not worried about the offense. I would be more excited about the defense and what the defense showed against Charlotte. That was a smart LA Galaxy team. You can be bored by it. I was actually enthralled by it. It's sort of like, Kevin, you look at a 0-0 game and, it's a pitcher's duel and people are like, well, this is boring and the whole deal. You watch baseball enough, you can find the interesting part of that. What's going on. Oh man, this is a crazy game we got going on, right? But you can watch that. For me, I watched that game and said, holy crap, the LA Galaxy are playing defense. They're being smart with their positioning. They're not giving the ball away, and they're attacking the way that they want to attack up to a certain point. Greg Vanney was critical of some of the attacking in terms of that they were allowing basically Charlotte to sit back and bunker a little bit on them, right? But that was exploited in the second half. The Galaxy were able to get around and in between and everything else. So they were able to create in that. It was just the finishing that was missing. I don't think anybody should be disappointed or upset about a 0-0 draw in Charlotte for the 3rd game of 3 all the way across the country. Maya Yoshida talked about the travel and how difficult it was. Joseph Paintsel, before he got injured, talked about the travel and how difficult it was. These guys, the whole road trip and everything, it was difficult. I asked Greg Vanney sort of how he thinks they handled it, and he thought they handled it pretty well. This was their toughest road trip. Now they get to go 4 out of 5. What happens whenever we come back here after the 5th game and the Galaxy still haven't won a game or there's draws? Yeah, then there's way bigger problems now. Now you get to talk about it. So,
well, defensively, a thing I liked is the depth now with Jalen Neal being back.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Aren't you the guy who said the LA Galaxy didn't have any depth like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, when Jalen Neal was hurt, and but now
just one guy. Oh, now that he's back, there's depth everywhere. Gosh, this John Nelson guy was playing.
He got some minutes from some unused players on the outside too, and it was worked out pretty well.
It almost looks like they have depth, Kevin. It almost looks like they could put some people in. People were talking about Nelson coming in, and they're like, I actually like him better than Aude. Whenever you're talking about pure defender, I'm like, yep, he can play. I thought that them rotating between Brugman and rotating between Cerrillo and Fagundes and Delgado and Puig and being able to put those pieces in Aguirre, sort of putting in these different places, I thought it was successful in that term as well. Getting guys minutes, getting guys playing, being able to stretch and be able to be competitive for 3 games. Charlotte didn't have to travel all the way across the country, and it looked like Charlotte was sucking wind more than the LA Galaxy were sucking wind at the end of that game. That game was there for the Galaxy to take. I think they were disappointed they didn't take it. But I mean, I think that's it. I see this as a good team.
But before you leave that point, that's a good point. If the game was there for the taking, and even the players say it was there for the taking, and they didn't take it, what does that say? Does that say the team is somewhat incomplete, lacks that killer instinct? Does it say anything about the team, or is it just, hey, it's a third game in a week, and they're halfway across the country, or all the way across the country, and that was the best we could do?
It says they didn't finish very well on the night, right? I mean, that's what it says. They finished well, I thought, against Minnesota. But didn't finish well against Charlotte. That's what I would take it away from. That's it. I thought everything else was okay. We can talk about Mitrovic, by the way, who came into goal for the very first time. There are lots of people who are saying, oh man, I like him better than John McCarthy. I feel better with the ball at his feet. I think he's more of a distributing goalkeeper. I will say this. If you are ready to ordain him a goalkeeper in place of John McCarthy, after facing 2 shots on the entire night, one of which probably wasn't a shot, was probably a cross, then you can. But there wasn't much there for him to do. Even Greg Vanny said so afterwards. He was sort of like, he did well with what he was asked to do. He goes, well, there wasn't a lot for him to do on the night. Again, successful for the LA Galaxy to go all the way across the country and limit the offensive production of a team that can score goals and it does have some talented players. I think Eric and I were sort of prognosticating and looking at Charlotte. Is Charlotte's record a product and their winning streak a product of the talent they were facing, or was it that they were a good team? I would tend to believe that they're more a product of the talent they were facing at that time. The 3-game win streak and the shutout streak wasn't against the toughest teams in the world. And I think that they showed, if you're a Galaxy fan and you look at that Charlotte game, has there been any team that the Galaxy have played this year where you were like, man, they're so much better than the Galaxy? I don't know that there's a team there. I mean, certainly not Austin. That game was a bad game by the LA Galaxy. Okay, throw it out. No big deal. Miami. Are you scared of Miami? Miami's a whole nother beast of an animal right now. You can certainly tell they're starting to really come alive. So I think the Galaxy are probably lucky they played them when they did. But that being said, did you think Miami was that much better than the Galaxy? I didn't. Whenever they played each other.
Well, when you look at the Miami game, it was scoreless. Miami hadn't scored going into stoppage time, and it was only after the Galaxy went down to 10 men.
Right.
So by the way, with the Mitrovic thing, we knew that was coming because Greg Vanny had told us that he was going to rotate his goalkeepers. I think Mitrovic is clearly the goalkeeper of the future.
Mitrovic.
Yeah, him too. Both of those guys.
Yeah, both of those guys.
Both of those guys are good. But he's clearly the goalkeeper of the future. The future is just not here yet. But he'll get a lot more play. I think he'll probably start a lot in the League's Cup, frankly. But we're going to see a lot more of him. John McCarthy is still the starter. He's the number 1 guy. He will be
right
for probably the rest of the season. But clearly, he's the keeper of the future.
Yeah, it is. I think so. I think that's what they feel. I mean, there's a couple future things that are going on here. I think Jalen Neal is the center back of the future. You look at Garces, who was on the bench for this game. I think that he eventually, I think you're going to see him sooner rather than later. I think it's coming. But Garces coming in, I think that in the near future is going to be a guy who's going to get a lot more playing time. And if you look at him for the future, funny enough, I think Miki Yamane is a guy who's going to stick around for a little bit, right? At the right back role. I think he's going to probably be with the Galaxy for a couple years here. Whenever you look at that. So Cerrillo, the defensive midfielder of the future and of the present for the LA Galaxy, getting a lot of playing time this year, and I think has done a pretty good job. So there's guys who you're seeing. I mean, technically speaking, Dejan Joveljic. You want to talk about the future, the now and the future. Dejan Joveljic is that guy. They have him under control for a little while here, so he's not going anywhere unless they want him to.
See, Gabriel Peck's also a very young player.
Gabriel Peck, and that goes into Misanthrope gave us a $5 super chat. When is Gabriel Peck going to show us what he can do? I don't know. I think we're all waiting for that. I don't have a line into him to understand. I think he's real close. Watching some of the runs and watching some of the replays of things, they were playing him into the right positions. My direction for Gabriel Peck, Kevin, is get him running at the goal with the ball. Not so much 1v1, but get him in behind the back line so that way he runs onto the ball, either takes one touch and passes or takes one touch and shoots. That's, I think, where you're going to find him to be the most dangerous, and that's where he scored his goals, is sort of being played into the box and hitting the ball either first time or one touch. That's what I want to see, and I think he was real close to that on some of those goals or some of the shots that he took against Charlotte. I was impressed by where he was finding shots. I was impressed by him making some room. Was not impressed by the finishing ability, and I think that has to get better. But I mean, that's the same with Dejan Joveljic. I think that's the same with Fagundes. I think it's the same with Yoshida. There's a bunch of people there who could have finished better against Charlotte, 100%.
Well, let's ask Jalen Neal what he thinks of the defense. Jalen, do you think the defense is playing well?
Yeah, I can't tell.
Is he saying yes or no? I can't really tell.
I can't really tell either. No.
That's the Jalen Neal bobblehead, folks. Those of you who are just listening to this.
Yes. Jalen Neal didn't suddenly pop in to give us his opinion on things. It's just the bobblehead. But no, I look at what you saw in Charlotte. The Minnesota game for me is the one. If you want to say a game that the Galaxy should have won on the road, it was the Minnesota game. I thought the Charlotte game was there for their taking. If they could produce it. Charlotte has a good defense. They have been. And they were very much into playing defense in this game. They also wanted to break out and run in transition. The Galaxy didn't let them. So, sort of seeing the what Charlotte was trying to do and seeing how the Galaxy denied them that, I thought that was a great game plan. So that was my guess. That was my take on Charlotte.
Nelson coming in and playing a little more of a defensive posture, maybe not as offensive. Do you think the Galaxy actually have sort of two different ways of playing, that they have a offensive way, depending on the personnel, there's an offensive team and a defensive team? Do you think that's oversimplifying it, or do you think
I think it
when
is.
you look at the personnel you put out there, you're going to play the game based on what the personnel can do?
It's interesting because I think this goes into whenever Greg Vanney made all the substitutions in the 73rd minute against Minnesota, and you took Puig off, you took Peck off, Paintsel was already off, so there were no DPs on there, and they went in with a lineup, and a lot of people were like, oh man, they're going too defensive. And then if you actually looked at the lineup that was put out there, you're like, actually, they have wing backs on the outside. They're able to attack. They're able to go forward. They still had strikers. I think the Galaxy sort of play the way the Galaxy do. I think John Nelson, whenever he comes in, is able to overlap. And we were seeing that in some of this game whenever he came on. He was overlapping on the left-hand side. He was getting forward for the first time this year. He wasn't so one-dimensional that I think we've seen. So I think the Galaxy play like the Galaxy, play like the Galaxy, play like the Galaxy. That's it anymore. And some people are going to like that and some people aren't. The Galaxy are extremely direct. And I know people think that's crazy too, but go and watch the replays for the chances they had on goals. It was in transition. It was passing into spaces. The Galaxy had their chances. They did not take them. Blame the finishing, blame the legs, blame the turf. Blame all those things. But those guys who got the chance with the ball at their foot all are capable of finishing that. So it wasn't that. Maybe it just wasn't their night, but they had plenty of chances to steal that game in Charlotte. And then being in a winning position against Minnesota and not letting that go. I mean, the crazy thing is you got to take points from RSL at home. You have to take more points than just one, and that's fine. The Galaxy went on the road and was able to almost steal Minnesota and almost steal Charlotte, and almost only counts for 2 more points whenever you look at it, right? So the whole deal. So for me, yeah, a little bit of a letdown, but I don't think I'm ever gonna shy away from points on the road. If you win your home games, you don't have a problem with points on the road. Draws on the road, not a problem. Home. Yeah.
By the way, you haven't mentioned. I haven't heard any wardrobe analysis for Greg Vanney.
Yeah, apparently he stayed away from the controversy this time, so I think we're good. We didn't have to worry about it. not with the scarf this time. So, but yeah, that's sort of where I sit with that. Now, the Galaxy, as we look at their schedule coming up, this is what we're talking about. Next 2 games at home. Homestand, everybody. Here we go. 5:25 and 5:29. So you're going to get a Wednesday night. You're going to get a Wednesday night game against Dallas. You're going to get the Saturday night game against Houston. Wednesday night against Dallas. Then the LA Galaxy will go on 1 game to Chicago, who has not been good. So they'll go away to Chicago. Then they're home to Kansas City, who has been, I don't know, wishy-washy. I'm not sure what Kansas City is. And then they're going to play New York City. I believe, if I'm correct, New York City is still sort of in that wishy-washy state as well. Very similar, I think, to the LA Galaxy. So 5th currently in the Eastern Conference. So this is your chance. We're talking about it. Home against Houston, home against Dallas, away to Chicago, home against Kansas City, and home against New York City before they then go away to RSL. You're going to need points in your quiver. So that way, whenever you go to RSL, that game matters a lot less. It's still going to be a big game.
And then the Stanford Stadium game with San Jose. Go back to the standings again. Something interesting there.
Eastern Conference, Western Conference. Eastern Conference. Here.
Eastern. Look at yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's the Western Conference.
New York City.
New York City. 3.
Yeah. Okay. So it's real blurry here. They're unbeaten at home, correct?
Let's see. Home 5-2-1. 5-2-1.
Okay.
So they've lost twice.
Better than their away record.
Yeah, their away record 2-3-1. 2 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw.
Kind of blurry on my screen. The reason I point that out is, Dignity Health Sports Park is one of the widest, if not the widest, field in MLS. And it was a field that Bruce Arena, we talk about Bruce Arena all the time, used to great success. Really played wide. Greg Vanny is getting to playing a little bit wide, I think, this season. You like to have guys on those big fields with their heels on the touchline. The reason I point that out is, New York City plays at Yankee Stadium. It's the smallest field in MLS. It's not regulation by any stretch of the imagination. It's far smaller than regulation. And you see New York play well at home and not play so well on the road. I think that's a game that the Galaxy are going to have, if they can go wide, they're going to really cause a lot of problems for New York City. I know that game's down the road, but just something to think about. You talk about styles of play. You say the Galaxy play the way the Galaxy plays. Well, New York City plays the way it plays, and when it goes on the road, that's a big problem for them.
Yeah, it certainly can. Well, Kevin, I think the important thing we should do now is get to the Corner of the Galaxy breaking news. The LA Galaxy breaking news, transfer rumor alert. Now, we're going to go first over to the one and only Mr. Tom Bogert as we look at his reports today. He originally put out that Charlotte FC is in active talks to sign Borussia Dortmund's legend Marco Reus. Nothing imminent, but Charlotte pursuing hard. And then there was an update. The update yesterday, I believe, was that the LA Galaxy are interested in Marco Reus as well. Charlotte has no interest in moving his discovery rights to LA Galaxy, especially as they continue to push to convince Reus. Dortmund have Champions League final in a few weeks. Nothing will be sorted on Reus's future for a while. So that was the breaking news. That was the important part. Now, I was out there theorizing today, Kevin. I was out there saying, well, if you're bringing in Reus, who, by the way, is 34, soon to be 35, he's an extremely talented central midfielder, central attacking midfielder. This is a guy who's played I believe his entire career in Germany. But not only that, is like he got transferred to Dortmund in like 2012. So he has been with them for such a long time. He is such an important player for them. And
two-time World Cup player.
Yeah, 2-time World Cup player. He has all sorts of different accolades that you want to look at. Just I think he's known as the blonde god in some circles. All right, so tremendously loved by the fans. Just an amazing player. But this is, if you're going to bring him in, to me, that screams designated player. That screams that perhaps you need to move somebody like Riqui Puig. I don't see the Riqui Puig and Marco Reus, or at least I was looking at this and saying I didn't see them sort of cohabitating. If you're going to have to pay him designated player, or if you're going to have to pay him, max TAM, how does that work? How is it going? How are you going to trade that out? So could be, and how much are you going to rely on him at 34, 35 years old, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff sort of out here. Let's get to the super chat from Michael. Michael, $5 super chat. Could the Marco Reus rumors be picking up more steam because of the recent news about Paintsville? Maybe the front office thinks the hammy might be a problem. I don't think so. He can play left winger, but he's mostly a central midfielder. And at this point, I don't think you're going to put him out on the wing and let him run. So that's certainly an interesting one. Misanthrope, a $2 super chat. Reus has an injury resume, not a good deal. it depends on a lot of things. So, Kevin, let's start digging around a little bit. What do you think? Any truth behind Marco Reus coming to the LA Galaxy?
Well, while you were doing your speculating, I did this thing called reporting.
Yes.
I actually talked to a lot of people very close to the Galaxy and very knowledgeable of what the Galaxy are thinking and what they're trying to accomplish on this. First of all, the whole thing about the discovery rights. First of all, I just have to say discovery rights, I understand what it's all about. My understanding is the theory of discovery rights is to keep one team from just getting all the great players that come into the league from overseas, so that there is a process. But to think that Charlotte discovered this guy who played in the 2014 World Cup final, won it, or to think that some team out there, discovered Kylian Mbappe, and would they discover him in the World Cup final,
right,
scoring goals? You don't discover players like this. But Charlotte does have the rights to him. My understanding from talking to people that are close to the situation say there's no way Royce wants to play for them, doesn't want to play in Charlotte. He's open to other possibilities in MLS. Apparently one of those is the Galaxy, but he doesn't want to go to Charlotte. So Charlotte is talking to him. He's really not interested in going to play there right now. Maybe they can make it interesting to him. I think at some point the league's going to have to step in and say, this is a player we need to have in our league.
Right.
And Charlotte, you're not going to block this guy from going to a team he wants to go to, which again kind of defeats the whole purpose of discovery rights, but Charlotte will wind up getting something from it. So I'm going to look at my notes here on the phone because I wrote down the notes on my phone of the people I talked to today. One of the things he would be, the DP spots are filled. They're filled for a long time.
Yes.
So he's not going to be a DP. He's going to be a TAM guy. Do they have to move somebody? We'll talk about the Galaxy salary in a little bit, but no, they don't have to move anyone, and they have no intention of moving anyone to create a spot for him. One of the questions I ask is, the Galaxy have moved away from that philosophy or whatever that they used to have, where they would sign, big name European guys who are in their 30s. He's going to be 35 next week. Mm-hmm. And I asked about that. And I said, this is against the Galaxy philosophy. What's going on there? And the response I got was, look, if you bring him in to start, that's one thing, but he's coming in as a complement. If he comes in, it's coming in as a complementary piece. They're not looking for him to play 90 minutes every weekend. And one of the examples was Giorgio Chiellini at LAFC. Now he wound up playing a lot,
right?
But the goal because he proved he could, the goal when he came in was he was a sort of a mentor. He was a guy that was going to be helping guys in training, playing the odd minute here or there, but he wasn't going to be a 90-minute guy. And that's how the Galaxy apparently looking at Marco as well. He would be a guy that would come in, he would play, he would fill in, he would play some minutes, start some games, not start some games. The problem is with that is when you bring a guy like that in and you're expecting him to play and start and play every weekend, that's not going to happen. So what I'm told is he fits in the salary budget. He fits in what they're trying to do structurally with the team. And they just need to get the rights from Charlotte or find some way to make that work. But the idea is he's not going to change the way the team plays. He's not going to become the focus of the team. He's very much going to be a complementary piece, but they really like him. And they think, his experience, he's played all over the world, played in World Cups. He's a guy that could come in and help some of the young players. And so the Galaxy are actually pretty high on this, and they think they can get it done. And we'll talk about salary in a minute, but when you look at their salary, or their payroll, I think there's a lot of room there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any room. I'll be honest with you. I have no idea. This is going to be a magic class for me. I am generally aware of sort of where the LA Galaxy stand in terms of cap space. And listen, let's talk about salary for a second and roster spends and all that stuff. So I can make a very important point, and we'll talk about the LA Galaxy. We went and we showed you, basically the salaries for all of these teams, right? You have Miami at 41 million and you have St. Louis at, 12 million. The difference between the 41 million and the 12 million down at the bottom, really, in almost every instance, Kevin, is just designated player spend. All right? That's what it is. Most of the teams, even the $12 million team, even all the way up, maybe the $12 million team has a little bit more room, but the salary cap is mostly filled on every single club. Everybody is hard up against the cap. You might have a little room here, a little room there. Maybe you trade somebody, maybe you sign maybe you waive somebody. You saw some teams waiving people today, sort of getting in the idea that they're trying to create some space and create some room. And how does that work? And what money can you find? all of these teams are going to be horse trading. They're going to be moving pieces around trying to find stuff. I don't know how the LA Galaxy find room under the cap in order for a max TAM player or somebody, at least a TAM player. I can't even say max TAM. Without moving somebody. I would think that maybe somebody like Gaston Brugman would have to go. I thought earlier if it was going to be a designated player deal that you'd have to move somebody like Riqui Puig. So for me, looking at this, obviously the Galaxy have the numbers. I don't have the numbers. I can just guess and sort of look, but it seemed like there wasn't a lot of wiggle room. So if you're asking how the LA Galaxy are going to get Marco Reus to come into the LA Galaxy, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know. But I will say that it seems like they want to. It still feels like there's some roadblocks in the way. I still feel like this is very, very, very far from being done, Kevin. This doesn't feel like it's imminent. This feels like it's initial steps, but that the Galaxy are interested.
Well, yeah. Part of the problem is he plays a position of need. I mean, they have Riqui Puig, but really not much of an attacking midfielder. Beyond that, Brugman I think is more of a defensive midfielder.
He's an 8. He's a box to box.
Yeah. Mark Delgado is not that attacking midfield player necessarily. Yeah.
Right.
So he fills a need. And I asked those questions. I said, okay, so you're bringing him on max TAM, then goodbye Brugman. And I was told, no, not at all. And then the question was, well, might you know something about Riqui Puig? Maybe he is going back to Europe in the summer transfer window. He's under contract, but you can always sell him. Maybe he's going back. Was told that's not part of it either, because they're looking at Marco as a guy for a year, maybe 2.
Right.
You don't replace a Riqui Puig with a guy who's just going to be here for a few minutes. So I don't know how they make it work either, but they're, from what the obvious targets, Brugman, and then he replaces Puig. That doesn't seem to be the Galaxy's thinking at all.
This seems like a job for Will Kuntz cooking in the kitchen. Let's play that jingle just to remind everybody. There we go. Okay, so somebody's gonna have to do some cooking the books, cooking in the kitchen. What do Germans like to eat? That Will Kuntz Schnitzel. Okay, so Kuntz needs to cook some schnitzel in order to get Reus, right? This is what we have to look at now for the LA Galaxy. Listen, I'll tell you, one of the guys who helped write a lot of these rules is Will Kuntz. If you're telling me that he can wave a magic wand and shake a hat and magic 8-ball it into existence, I'll believe it, and I can't wait to hear the story of how it works. I think the bottom line is you have to ask yourself, does Marco Reus make the LA Galaxy better? And knowing that they have limited funds, limited DP spots, limited max TAM, all that stuff, if they can bring him in, if he wants to play in LA, if he can do that and be that guy, does he make the LA Galaxy better? I think the answer is unequivocally yes. I'm still questioning the LA Galaxy in terms of what they need for a backup striker, because I don't think Miguel Berry is going to be the answer there. So I still think that they need to work and fill that spot as well. This is not an all or nothing. They can walk and chew gum at the same time. I know lots of people are like, don't need, Reus, you need a striker. It's like, well, they can do both. It's okay. But looking at this and how they sort of fill those spots and how they go about it, this is an interesting time to be an LA Galaxy fan right now. There are some needs, and it seems like at least right now they have a target. How it works, I don't know, but I think that'll play out.
Well, with Reus, the people we're talking to today, I asked the exact same questions. I had the same take you did. Originally, I thought I dismissed the rumors, and then it was like, the Galaxy philosophy now is away from the old European players. I even asked somebody at one point if they would have taken Hugo Reus at $350,000. And the thought was the days of us getting 37-year-old French players is over. And then they turn around and now they're talking about Reus. And I asked that question exactly that way. What are you doing?
Right.
And the response I got from this person, who again is knowledgeable with what the Galaxy are thinking, was, does he make the team better? Yes, he makes the team better. If he makes the team better, then you go make the move. Now, he makes the team better because he is a complementary piece. And if you can get him in, now he made $7 million, by the way, this year. He would be a free transfer. Once his Dortmund season is over, he's a free transfer. The Galaxy would probably do the same thing that LAFC is doing, that they did with Chiellini when Will Kuntz was there, which is basically saying, look, you've made all your money already. You don't need any more money. You want to come play on a winning team, come to MLS. I'm sure that's part of the sales pitch the Galaxy are using. But again, he makes our team better if we use him in the role that we see that he fits, which is as a complementary piece who's not going to play 90 minutes a game. He makes us better. Now, if we're relying on him to be our superstar to lead our team, probably not a good fit. But the thing is, he makes our team better. He's better than the guys we have in that role right now.
Yeah, you can understand, and I think I'll defend the Galaxy a little bit as well, is there was always we're not going to rely on those older stars to be our designated players, our focal point and our stuff. But as complementary pieces, I think that's always been in the Kuntz and LA Galaxy playbook. So I think they're being consistent with sort of what they're trying to do. It still feels this way. I've been mentioning it too, that I thought they could still get a big name at some point, but it wouldn't be for designated player.
Well, you look at Billy Sharp last year. He was 37. No one freaked out over getting a 37-year-old guy from Europe because he helped and he filled the role he was supposed to fill. And by the way, he came in at a time when they really needed a warm body to play at striker with all the injuries and stuff. So he filled a role. The Galaxy let him go. And that's, again, back to that philosophy of, hey, if Royce can come in and help us for a little bit, that's great. But we're not building the future of the franchise around him.
Let's get back to some super chats. Adam, $5 super chat. 4 of the next 5 matches at home, expecting wins, not draws. This should be a standard. Can't be happy for having draws. Yes, true. And also, if they stay undefeated and string in 3 or 4 wins during that, while that happens as well, you're going to be pretty happy as well. So it's certainly something there to look at. I think we got both from Misanthrope about the Royce's injuries and then needing a solid striker there. Misanthrope also says, $2 super chat, this is my favorite part of Mondays and Thursdays, so that's good. I'm assuming he means me because I'm on Mondays and Thursdays. You're just on Mondays, so he's not talking about you at all. Let's talk about the LA Galaxy and salary, though, because it was something that you want to talk about. We touched about it on a little bit, but let's talk about it. I mean, what did you want to point out about the Galaxy and spending and everything that's going on in 2024?
Well, their team payroll, according to the figures from the Players Association, is down to $17.9 million, which is 8th best in the league. That's significant because going back to the Bruce Arena years, the Galaxy have never been any lower than 3rd. In 2015, they were 5th. At 12, that year was 12.1 million, but obviously inflation. So now they're 8th best in the league in payroll at 17.9 million. Now that does not count the money that the Galaxy will Kuntz spend on transfer fees. I think it was over 20 million, right? With
the 3 players, it's about 20 million, 20 plus.
Yeah. Yamani, Peck, and Paintsil. That money is not included in that. So when you look at what the Galaxy paid to put this team together, it's right around 28 million. So that would, well, no, it's more than that. It's actually, it would be about 37 million. They'd be second in the league to Miami. You'd then have to count everybody's transfer fees as well, and then that would go up and blah blah. You know, the whole deal. I think yeah. There's the point is, you look at the payroll and you think they're being cheap. It's down 24.1% from last year to year.
Right.
And not even year to year, because the salary last year at the end of the season, they're down 24% from that. At the beginning of the season, it was less. So you look at that and you say, well, the Galaxy aren't investing, they're not spending. No, they are. You just have to include the transfer fees, which are higher than the transfer fees for 3 players, higher than the payroll for the entire team. So that's one thing to look at. All throughout MLS, though, I mean, it's really going in a good way. It's really going, and I'm not talking about the Messis and well, Suarez didn't skew anything because he's a TAM player, but the average general compensation in MLS is almost $600,000 this year. The median salary is over $300,000. It's $308,000. When you think about how the league was just a few years ago, they're now paying these players, living wages for what they do. It's trending in the right direction. And certainly, the big name players and the big salaries are helping that. Joseph Paintsil is going to make, he's guaranteed to make 3.35 million, so over 3.4 million almost. He's the 20th best paid player in the league. And the reason the Galaxy salaries are down, as you mentioned before, is they lost 2 very expensive DPs in Chicharito and Douglas Costa.
Right.
And they replaced them with a couple of DPs, but much more moderately priced.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it. And again, it just feels like you talked about 2017. Go back and look at the 2017, sort of debacle that played out. And it feels like the Galaxy actually constructed this team. 2017 found it like they were reaching in their pockets and like creating the team with the lint that was still left in the pockets for most of that time. So it is a different adjustment for the LA Galaxy. And by the way, the Galaxy ended up spending a lot of money, through 2017, 2018, whenever they go in and get Zlatan and, I think they brought in 2017, they brought in Jonathan Dos Santos midway through the season as well, right? So
Yeah.
there was a lot of stuff going on.
And they still had Gio then.
They had
The
Gio,
Galaxy
yep.
traditionally not only had one of the top 3 payrolls in the league, but generally they've had a couple at least of the top 8 to 10 best paid players in the league. Last year, I think Chicharito was second or third, and Douglas Costa was in the top 6 or 7. This year, Paint still is the best paid player, and he's 20th in the league.
Yeah.
Have the Galaxy gotten cheap? No, I think they've gotten smart. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. They've constructed the team that they want. They want this team to play together. They have an idea of what they need, and they've figured out what it costs. And when you spend $21 million in transfer fees on 3 players, it's hard to say that you're being cheap. But then when you look at the payrolls and their best paid player is 20th in the league, it looks like they're being smart.
Yeah, it does. If we go and look at the Galaxy through 14 games, 22 points, just one off of their 2022 of a record of 23 points through 14 games. 2021 had 25 points through 14 games. I bet if you went back and looked at some of those, though, Kev, you would find that the Galaxy didn't play as many away games in both of those seasons to start the season as well. Again, to me, that's handicapping the LA Galaxy right now. Is you're trying to figure out how good they are. Well, they've been on the road for 9 games, so let's sort of pay attention to that as it goes. But looking at this schedule coming up, Kev, what do you sort of make of Houston, of Dallas, of then getting Kansas City and New York City at home? Are these games for the Galaxy to win?
When I look at this, I think you need to go to urgent care. Is what I see.
No, just a tickle in my throat that won't go away. I've been fine all day, so go ahead, continue.
Well, I mean, the Houston and Dallas games, those are always tough. Both those teams, even when they're struggling and having bad seasons, tend to give the Galaxy fits. You would think that there's a chance to keep that winless streak alive at home, but I agree, they need to get some wins. You said they have 5 games right coming up at home, 5 of the next 6.
4 of the next 5.
For the next 5, it seems to me that they need to get at least 10 points out of that. Not that points are something that really matters a lot right now, but I'm just looking at the performance. 10 points would mean 3 wins and a draw. And they need to have to put some point. They need to put some stuff up on the scoreboard at home because they need to turn that into a fortress. And Greg Vanney has talked about that in past seasons, that the Galaxy have not been that fortress team at home that they used to be. It used to be impossible. And he knows, Greg Vanney knows, because he came in here a number of times as a opposing coach. He knows that the Galaxy were always tough to beat at home. And that was part of their MO. And they need to return to that. And so I think in those, in this little homestand coming up, I think they need to put some points up on the board just to show that they still are that difficult to beat team at home. And yes, they're unbeaten at home, but I just don't know that they play that well.
Yeah, they've played okay, but they've had to come back and salvage some things. You want them to get comfortable at home. You want them to start sort of playing like they played against Charlotte, but controlling the game. Again, 60% of the possession against Charlotte on the road. You need 60% possession games for the Galaxy at home. You need games where they are able to win and win early. You need to be able to shut it down in the 60th, 70th minute. Be like, this game is over. We're good to go. The defense coming alive against Charlotte was a big thing. I want to see that and see if they can continue that trend, but do it at home. It's, for whatever reason, Greg Vanney's teams have felt a lot of pressure at home. We've talked about it a bunch of times throughout his tenure, that they felt a lot of pressure at home, Kevin, and that sometimes affects them. They need to find a way not to have that pressure, but to use that pressure to their advantage, right? You can't get rid of it. There's going to be expectations that you win. Look at us. We're sitting here saying this is where the LA Galaxy need to make their move. They have 4 out of the next 5 at home. They should be, give me 9 points, give me 10 points out of those 4 home games. I mean, you can draw 1 but win 3, and I think you're pretty happy.
Well, here's another thing about going on the road, and this may be reaching a little bit, but they played the games that they played on the road. The most recent 3 have been on, I think, 3 of the worst fields in the league. First of all, Seattle is a turf field.
Right.
As turf fields go, it's probably not bad. It's not as bad as Portland's, but it's a turf field. Charlotte's a turf field as well. So not ideal fields. And then the other game, the middle game of that sort of road swing is Minnesota. A grass field, but horrible because of the weather there. And they're still coming out of winter. That field has always been bad. So they played 3 games on really bad fields. By coming home and getting 4 of the next 5 at home, playing on the turf that they're used to, one of the better fields in the league, one of the widest fields in the league. There's a lot of things about playing at Dignity Health Sports Park, aside from being home in front of your fans and sleeping in your own bed,
right,
that I think are going to help the Galaxy. And what they need is to get a little bit of confidence and get a little bit of rhythm. And I think by playing 4 or 5 games on a field they're used to, a quality field, I do think there's something to be said for just the comfort of that field and getting to feel themselves sort of gelling as a team and being on the same page offensively and defensively. I think that's sort of an unspoken advantage of playing that many games at home on that particular field. Now, if you're Portland, you may want to go on the road. If you're New York, you may not want to play on that postage stamp. But the Galaxy have a great field. And I think this will help them maybe find their rhythm a little bit.
Yeah, Mr. Bravino says, I don't think it's wide anymore. It's still one of the wider fields in Major League Soccer. They may have brought it in a couple yards, but it didn't matter because Bruce Arena used to make that thing so wide, it was almost wider than it was long. Their Galaxy used to play on a square. But for the most part, everything has stayed relatively close. It's within a couple yards. It's not overly. They didn't shrink it up a whole bunch. And quite honestly, Greg Vanney likes to use it with the speed on the outside. They also like to cut the grass a little bit shorter and let the speed work for them. You saw certainly in Seattle, I think that they didn't water the turfs that way. The speed for the LA Galaxy wouldn't have been as big of a deal. So and Greg Vanney talked about it being spongy, and the players talked about it being spongy and draining and everything else that was sort of there. So you can always remember home cooking at home. You get to decide what you want to do with the field. You get to decide how you want to set it up. That's your prerogative as the home team. So I think the Galaxy need a little home cooking. They need to come home, maybe have some pupusas from AFCHA, during the week, sort of get them all fired up. That's always, pupusas are good for athletic training. That's what I heard. And really go in there and go after Houston. Ben Olsen's a cagey coach. I'm interested to see how the LA Galaxy handle him, how they play, because Houston is a team that can sometimes have the LA Galaxy's number. Dallas is a team that sometimes can have the LA Galaxy's number. Whenever you're not a good team, there's lots of teams that have your number. So it's time to start saying, okay, this LA Galaxy's team is good, so start having their numbers. And they're not, at the top of the Western Conference when we look at things. They're not this juggernaut.
Kansas City, too, is always a team that, especially in Kansas City, but even at home, you just never know. Right. This Kansas City team could come in and just fall flat, and the Galaxy could walk all over them.
They're in 13th.
Or Kansas City could play a really, really tough game. You just never know what you're going to get from them. And again, you're looking at Dallas and Kansas City, right, being down at the bottom of the standings. Houston sort of on the edge of the playoff race right there.
Yep, 8th.
But they don't play that way against the Galaxy, it seems to me.
Yeah, Houston in 8th, Dallas in 12th. Sporting Kansas City in 13th, San Jose in 14th. The Galaxy have to go to Chicago. Chicago is currently in 14th in the Eastern Conference, right? So we can look at this and go, okay, so, Houston's 8th. I think Dallas was 12th, I said. They're going away to Chicago, who's way down on the eastern side. You have Kansas City, who's way down on the western side. You have New York City, who's probably going to be one of the better teams at that point. I think they're 5th. In that Eastern Conference right now. Is that what it is? No, they're 3rd in the Eastern Conference. So New York City, again, they're such a wishy-washy team, though, whenever it comes to it. I've watched them, and I'm like, I don't know. And by the way, probably the same as the LA Galaxy sometimes. I do not think that there's a big standout in the Western Conference for me. And because of that, I'm sort of waiting to see who breaks out. Certainly RSL has been playing well, but for me, I'm not convinced they're going to run away with anything, but we'll see.
No, I think RSL may be the class of the league at this moment. Colorado's playing really well too, but that's why I say I think they need 10 of the 12 points from these 4 home games because of where those teams are in the standings, the teams they're playing. Now, again, those teams could rise up as they generally do against the Galaxy, but if you're playing the team that's 13th in the 14-team conference at home, you really figure you need to beat them, and if you don't, that's disappointing.
Can you get 10 points in 4 games? Can you get 10 points in 4 games?
3 and 1.
3. Oh, so you think that they need to go 3 wins, 1 draw, huh? Okay, all right, I'll allow it.
I'll say. Would you feel better if I said 9?
It was more just, I was trying to think what your head was thinking. I didn't quickly go, 3-1.
My head was thinking, I don't know how to do math.
That's
But
what
realistically, when you look at those, if you want to go back and look at it game by game, again, Houston, Dallas, Real Salt Lake, or rather Kansas City, the Galaxy always seem to find ways to struggle against those teams. Yeah. But when you look at where they are in the standings, they got to beat those three teams at home, I think.
Yeah.
And then the New York City game, again, I think New York City is going to struggle on the wide field, but they are a team that's high up in the standings. They're in the playoff race. They've won some games this season. So maybe the New York game is the game they struggle. But man, if you have two of the three teams in the bottom of the conference coming in to play you at home, I think those are games you got to win.
Adam, $5 super chat. Dynamo has the least amount of goals scored in the Western Conference. Not only that, Adam, Houston has 12 goals for them, which is the least in the Western Conference, but then Dallas only has 13 goals scored for them. So you're talking about the two worst offenses in the Western Conference coming against the LA Galaxy. Now, Dallas has only allowed 17 goals. Houston has only allowed 13 goals. So you may look at them and say, hey, they haven't scored a lot of goals, but they also don't give up a lot of goals. So,
and that's bad for the Galaxy because the Galaxy have been very good at preventing goals. They've struggled a little bit lately on scoring them.
Yeah, so we'll see. Again, I'm not worried about the scoring. I think the scoring thing's going to work itself out. I feel like there's plenty of offensive weapons on this. I don't think it's a slump. I don't think it's anything. I think it was travel, and I think it's been Joveljic that hasn't been 100%. But you can see how much better the Galaxy play when Joveljic is on the field. So for me, I think I'm good on that. Let's see. Anything else that you sort of wanted to go over? I did find this interesting. I always keep track of scoring first and allowing first. The Galaxy have allowed the first goal 6 times, and the Galaxy have scored the first goal 6 times. 2 games with 0-0 draws, which means you don't get to count those, right? Because nobody scored first. So in those, when the Galaxy score first, they have scored 15 goals, allowed 9, and they're 4-0-2, undefeated. When the Galaxy allow the first goal, they are 1-2-3. I would still like to point out that even when they allow the first goal, their record is to get a point or better more times than they have lost the game. They've only lost twice. Here's another thing to sort of put into focus for everybody for a second. Galaxy have played 14 games. How many games have they lost this whole year? 2. That's something that isn't talked about enough. The Galaxy have only lost 2 games. I know you want to complain about the draws. The Galaxy have only lost 2 games this whole year. Yes, 34 draws doesn't get it done, but quite honestly, the Galaxy already have more in terms of they've already won some games, so they won't finish with 34 points just because of all the draws, right? It's one of those. It's like, okay, so they're going to have to win some games. I think the wins are coming. I just want to see them. The most important thing for me isn't so much the home games. It's finding a rhythm in the home games for me, Kevin. It's being able to string some momentum together. I think the Galaxy actually have some momentum coming off that road trip. I think that while they're not ecstatic, right? They're like, that wasn't perfect. I think that they're confident coming off of it saying, we played okay. This was not a problem. We went on the road, we played the tough games, and we played okay. Now we're home. Now's the time. Let's go. And I think Greg Vanney talks so much about momentum and how precious it is, and how easy for him to say, how precious it is, and how important it is in Major League Soccer to get that momentum, to grasp it, and to hold on to it when you have it. You start reeling off wins become easier, right?
Say precious again.
I refuse to. It will. I don't know why.
This kind of goes back to the theme of this show. From my side is, I'm still having trouble getting my hands around what kind of team this Galaxy is. Is it an offensive team, a defensive team? Is it a team that comes back late in games when it should be losing? Yes, it's done that 3 times, making up 2-goal deficits. Is it a team that grasps every opportunity in front of it? No, because they had one in Charlotte and they've had others. So I just don't know what this team is, but I do think you're right that they've been on the road so much. And think about going on the road. They went to Austin. It was pretty hot and the weather was clammy and everything. Then their next game's in Seattle and it's cold and rainy. Then they go to Minnesota and play on that terrible grass field. And they go from that to Charlotte. They don't even come home. Right. They stay there. And then they go to Charlotte to play on turf field. So it's difficult to get that kind of rhythm and to find out how you want to play as a team. For Riqui Puig to find out exactly how he's supposed to weight the passes to Gabriel Peck, for example. A lot of that takes time and takes work. And I think 4 of 5 games on that field at home where they can work on things and find that rhythm and find that cohesiveness. I do agree with you on that this homestand could be more important than just the games. It could be more.
Right.
It could be important from finding that rhythm, because they're not going to have to adjust to a different field and different weather every 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. By the way, Matt, Mr. Provino says it was not hot in Austin. It was perfect weather. Kevin, come on, Kevin, get with it. He didn't add that part. I said that part, just so you know. He was being nicer to you. Let's see. Gary, $5 super chat. Great show as always, gentlemen. Very much appreciate it. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate you being in there. Adam would like to remind us that former Galaxy players Dan Steris with Houston and Sebastian Lletget with Dallas coming back to visit the LA Galaxy.
Sebastian's been hurt though a little bit. I don't know if he has been.
Yeah, I don't know if he's back. I haven't been watching a lot of Dallas. They have not been on my watch list. They will be now that they are coming up. So I'll add them to my watch list so I can get some of them. But that's where we're at. The LA Galaxy currently sitting in 4th place in the Western Conference with 22 points, just exactly 6 points away from Salt Lake City through 14 games played. Salt Lake City has 8 wins. The Galaxy have 5 wins. Galaxy have 7 draws. St. Louis is the only other team in the Western Conference that has 7 draws. So interesting to sort of take a look at that. Again, the LA Galaxy undefeated at home, 2-0-3. 5 times they played at home, but just getting those 2 wins. So now it's important as the Galaxy get ready to take on Houston. That game coming up on Saturday. It is Memorial Day weekend, so hopefully everybody will be out there. Should be a great time. 7:30 p.m. 5-2-7 LA Galaxy versus 5-5-3 Houston Dynamo at Dignity Health Sports Park. That game can be found on MLS Season Pass. So that's the game we will have previewed for everybody on Thursday night. So it should be a good night to go. So anything else you want to get to, Kevin, before we close this out?
One more thing. You talked about the number of draws. The most draws in the Western Conference, St. Louis. Second most.
Yeah, the both of them, the Galaxy and St. Louis, both have 7.
And what happened when they played one another?
They drew.
Yes, they did.
Isn't that interesting? See
how that works?
It's amazing how things line up. I was trying to see if I could look real quick at the 7, and then you can't see St. Louis on the other one. There's a good chance those might be the only seven draw teams, but I can't see St. Louis on the standings below where I cut them off.
Can't imagine anybody else has drawn half their games.
Drowan.
Say Precious.
No, apparently Prussia. That's what I was going with. Prussia, not Russia, but Prussia. So that's where it is. No, the Galaxy, this is it. Home games. This is what you've been waiting for. This is the homestand you've been waiting for. These are the droids you're looking for. LA Galaxy versus Houston, LA Galaxy versus Dallas, and then LA Galaxy versus SKC, LA Galaxy versus New York City. Split in between those, of course, is the game away to Chicago as well. These are points that the Galaxy can get. So looking at the next 5 games, possible 15 points. If the Galaxy get 10 to 12 of those, I wouldn't be surprised. So,
see, I don't ask you how the math works.
I just pulled it out anyway. I didn't want to think about it too much. I just threw out numbers. That way we could do it.
What does Galen Neal have to say about that?
Yeah, he says yes. I can tell. I can see it on his face. He likes that math. 100%. All right. Let's get on out of here then as we get everybody ready. And again, we'll be back on Thursday for a little preview of the Houston game. So if you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter and X, it's at KBaxter11. Head over to the LA Times for all his wonderful sports articles. He covers everything, ladies and gentlemen, everything. WNBA, long distance running. He was a long distance runner himself. Get out there, LATimes.com. That's certainly where you can find him. If you're looking for me on Twitter and X, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Articles, all that fun stuff is up there and ready and waiting for you, so please head that direction. All right. Tell all your friends about the podcast. We're working on some stuff behind the scenes to make it an even more fun season this year. Hopefully you'll be joining us at a live event here real soon. For Mr. Kevin, the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh, Pato Guesman. You've been listening, you've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.